Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today and welcome to the webcast. My name is Ted Ballantyne. I'm the managing director of Pro Judicata Legal Marketing, and we're going to hear a great presentation today, the focus of which is Twitter and how you should be using Twitter as an attorney to market yourself and your practice. And to walk us through this, we have an expert on this subject, and that's Jared Correia. And Jared is the founder and CEO of Red Cave Consulting. He's a frequent speaker at national events like the ABA Tech Show. He hosts the Legal Toolkit podcast. And most relevant to today's presentation, Jared is the author of the book Twitter in 1 Hour for Lawyers, which is published by the American Bar Association and which is the definitive guide to Twitter for attorneys. And now before we start, I did want to mention that there will be a Q&A session after the main presentation. So if you want to submit a question, you can do that at any time. Just type it into the chat box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And once you send it in, it will go straight to us. And so with that said, I want to hand the reins now to Jared to take us through the presentation. So whenever you're ready, Jared.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks for having me for this presentation. I appreciate it. Talking about Twitter is probably my second favorite thing to do. I won't tell you my favorite thing to do is. So I'm going to go for about a half an hour here. And as Ted said, I'm happy to take questions at the end. Or actually, Ted, also, if you get questions during, I'm happy to take those as well. But I'm going to talk for about a half an hour on Twitter. And I'm going to try to move through a bunch of things here in somewhat rapid fire fashion. But as Ted said, if you're interested, I do have a book published by the ABA called Twitter in 1 Hour for Lawyers, in which I outline in great detail how you should tweet as a lawyer. So I'm going to come at this from several different perspectives. So starting with, what do you do on Twitter? I get a lot of lawyers who talk to me and say, all right, it sounds interesting to me. I'm interested in social media in general, but I don't know really how to do Twitter. It's kind of a different social medium than what lawyers may be used to. I think a lot more lawyers probably use Facebook and LinkedIn, but the attorneys I know who are on Twitter are very active. And one of the things it does is it provides a great platform for getting referrals from other attorneys, but I'll get to that. So the primary question, as I said, that people ask is, what do I do? What do I tweet? Well, I don't answer this question directly, but I come at it in a way where I tell people that you want to be thinking about what you're going to post, depending on a role you'll play on the service. And there are generally 4 different roles that lawyers can play. So one is as a newscaster. So you're somebody who is a subject matter expert in your field, whether that field is immigration law, family law, personal injury, whatever it is, you know your stuff. So one of the things that you do is you broadcast news and information. If there is a new statute potentially that will have an effect on your practice area and your clients, you post that. If there's a court case of interest, you post that. Maybe you write a blog post on it. And in addition to posting the information itself, the raw information, what you can also do is post your take on it. And in both ways, you're providing newsworthy, news-related content. In one instance, you're promoting the news itself. In another instance, you're promoting your editorial analysis on that point. And I'll get back to that in a little bit. But one thing you can post pretty clearly is news. Real news, not fake news, right? And as I just mentioned, the other thing you can do is be an analyst. If something comes out that is newsworthy and is related to your practice, you can editorialize on it. You can give your opinion. You can add some personal flair, and you can throw that out there. And that's a great way to get information across on Twitter. And it doesn't necessarily have to derive from news. It could be related to problems that your clients will face. I know a lot of I know a lot of estate planning attorneys, for example, who are very aggressive in blogging and on social media. And I think one of the best ways to think about blogging, for example, as an attorney, is to kind of query your clients and figure out what the top 10 pain points they have are. and then you write about those 10 issues. And I talk about blogging as a way to get back into the social media conversation because it gives you something to post. It's not necessarily a short observation, but what it is a post that links back to your website, informational, shows that you're a subject matter expert, and relates to your field of expertise. So if you can post that kind of information and you have a good idea that it answers one of the questions that a potential client or existing client of yours would have, then that's a good thing. It positions you to strengthen the relationships you already have with your clients and to build potential relationships with new clients and also referral sources who may be looking for the same type of information. And one thing I'll talk about is the way you kind of do social media, Twitter and other social media services, is you become a content curator and a content poster. And it doesn't necessarily have to be other people's stuff. It can also be your stuff. And you want to have a mix of that information. And if I was to assign percentages of it, I would try to post like 80% stuff that is not yours that you've done and 20% your own information. You don't want to be in a situation where you're looking like a spammer or you're out there just blatantly marketing your stuff all the time. What you want to do is you want to be an information provider. And you can do that by being an analyst and being a newscaster. I'm going to skip over the third one for a second, which is Crusader, and I'll talk about that. But the curator on social media is an important person as well. Because if you think about this, one of the things you're doing is you're trying to show people that you're a subject matter expert in your field. And as I just said, there's a couple of ways you do that. One, you find other content that's useful, that's related to your field, and you post it. And you write things or record things. These could be videos as well, for example, and you post those to your social media accounts as well. Both those are aspects of curation. So what you can do is position yourself as a person where people are going to find go-to information about your practice area through you. That's how you can become a must follow on a Twitter account or on any social media service for that matter. And part of that is curating the right content. Now, there are different ways to do that. You could use Twitter itself, for example, to curate information. If you follow the right accounts and can repost from those accounts, that's one way to get this newsworthy information. You can follow blogs that are popular and post information from those blogs, not necessarily getting that information through Twitter. There are news services that you can follow. Maybe you subscribe to some newsletters related to your practice area. All that's fair game, as long as it's information that is publicly available on a website and not behind a paywall or a subscription service. Post it out, and you'll show yourself to be a subject matter expert. Again, you're analyzing issues, you're presenting news, and you're curating the right kind of content so people know that A, they can trust you because you're a subject matter expert, and B, they can trust you because you're a reliable news source. So the last point I want to talk about here is this notion of being a crusader. And I use the example of immigration attorneys right now because it's a pretty obvious example. With all the political changes that have been wrought with the new administration, and I'm personally not getting into whether or not I agree with that stuff, but for a lot of immigration attorneys, disagree with what's been going on in the political sphere. And you see a lot of immigration attorneys who are advocating for the rights of their clients and potential clients. They're doing things like circulating petitions via Twitter. They're doing things like when an executive order passes or some new law, they will post to people, look, we'll have attorneys at the airport because if you're landing today, there are new laws in place. And if you get stuck in the airport, we're going to be there to help you. That's extremely powerful advocacy. And I've known immigration attorneys who have gained thousands of followers in a single day because they're addressing these hot button issues. Some of them are even going after like federal Twitter accounts. Now, that's not going to be the case for every practice area. But if on top of these other roles I suggested that you might play on these services, you can also be somebody who is a crusader for your clients. Well, your clients are clearly going to love that. And a byproduct of that is that you may become newsworthy yourself. So you get journalists or other folks who produce the news to write about you, ask you for quotes, ask you for on-air appearances. That stuff does happen. And Twitter is a particularly great avenue for getting to publishers and broadcasters. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. So this is probably clear based on what I had just talked about previously, but when you're posting, you want to be helpful. So you want to help your clients. You want to figure out, what are these clients' pain points? How do I solve them? And how do I write about that in the way that resonates with them? As I said, you're an estate planning attorney. You maybe say, I was canoeing with my sister the other day and I realized that she didn't have a will. How about that? The sister of an estate planning attorney doesn't have a will. I've seen people gain traction with that. If you are a bankruptcy attorney, maybe you focus on somebody gets collection letters constantly. How do you solve for that? Somebody has to appear in court on a debt issue for the first time. These are the points in time at which people are going to be searching for services like yours. So you want to provide relevant content. And even if you post it somewhere else, as soon as you get it onto Twitter and other social services, you expand your reach and allow more people to view that information. You also want to help your colleagues. And this is a really great way to use a social media service like Twitter. It gets sticky when you're marketing to clients because there are these solicitation rules, which you may have heard of. And although those are clear in traditional avenues and non-social media, on social media, it's a little bit tougher to figure out when does the attorney-client relationship attach. And there are limited things that you can do in terms of adding disclaimers to a Twitter account, for example. You only have a 160 word bio. 160 character bio. And if you're going to be linking out to a disclaimer or trying to write a disclaimer in that bio, it's going to be a very difficult thing to do. So a lot of attorneys feel gun shy about trying to find clients on social media. So instead of doing that, what I found that a lot of people will do is make sure that they're posting information that is helpful to colleagues, potentially referring attorneys. So the more you position yourself as a subject matter expert, the more people are going to notice you. Not just potential clients, but attorneys who can refer you cases. Those may be attorneys who are in the same practice area as you, but have a different niche. Those may be attorneys who are in complementary practice areas. You make that information available, they'll find you eventually. So one of the things to think about here is finding colleagues, finding referral sources, and how you go about doing that. And that's going to be targeted a little bit differently than the client finding work. So you want to make sure that you're in a position to post the information that is useful to them in a way that is useful to them. For example, if you were writing a blog post for a client, let's say, the average online reading level is about a 5th grade level. So you're going to produce some very generic information, especially because this is lay people that you're broadcasting to. If you're posting things for other attorneys, you may want to go several levels up because attorneys are potentially going to take the time to read it and make sure that they're diving into it, and they're going to want to know more about an issue than the layperson would. A third thing you can do is help the organizations that you support. So if you're already active in a local bar association or a local meetup group, for example, some of the things you can do are help them to promote their information on Twitter and also to help them promote events on Twitter. If you're somebody who can drive attendance to meetings for bar associations, for example, there are an untold number of things that those bar associations will do for you in exchange for your support. So I think that's really helpful as well. And if you're a subject matter expert in the field, you're an attorney in a niche, and there are niche organizations that you can help, well, that's great. And you can help simply by reposting something that they've produced. So if you're an immigration attorney, for example, and AILA has produced some piece of news or article that you think is interesting, repost it, tag them in it. So put the little @ symbol in front of their username so you make sure that they see it. And that's a great way to get information out and also to help an organization who may be able to help you at some point in the future. Get free tickets to an event, you get asked to lead a CLE, all that is good stuff in terms of marketing. The last thing is you can help journalists. So believe it or not, journalists are starting to source folks from Twitter to talk about issues that are relevant to specific niches, including law practice. So if you're somebody who's out there talking about your practice area, you're far more likely to be found by a journalist. Journalists don't always have sources for the articles they're trying to write. So one of the things they do to find sources is search the internet and specifically search Twitter. There's a search functionality within Twitter that journalists can use. And you can go one step further as well. You can follow journalists on Twitter. You can get their posts and maybe they'll follow you back. And if they follow you back, then they'll see what your subject matter expertise is because you're posting in that regularly. There's a theme to everything you do online. And you are more likely to become a source for them than somebody who's not active on Twitter. And you can parlay that into a situation where you're getting calls to appear in these big time magazines or TV shows. Attorneys are on Fox News, attorneys are on CNN, attorneys are on local news broadcasts, attorneys are on articles in the Atlantic Magazine, Time Magazine, New York Times. A lot of those folks are found as because they appear as subject matter experts nationally via Twitter. So keep that in mind as well. When you're posting this relevant information, journalists are more likely to find you. And if you actively seek out and follow the journalists that you would want to write about you, they're also even more likely to find you. And it's not bad form to do that. It's not noxious or obnoxious to follow somebody. You can do that. If they want to follow you back, it's their choice. And then you increase your chances of becoming a media source. And if you can become a media source, it can really explode the reach that your practice has. Let's talk a little bit about posting strategy for a few minutes. These are various questions I get in terms of how and when to post on Twitter. So how often do you post? Well, obviously that's a personal decision, but there is some strategy involved as well. You want to be posting enough that you're relevant to people who you're going to be appearing in their streams. The thing to realize about these social media services that I have like 15,000 Twitter followers. I follow like 12,000 people. Like, I don't see all their stuff. So if someone posts something more than once, that doesn't bother me because I might only see it once. So for example, when I do a new blog post, I post it 3 to 5 times over the course of 2 weeks, just because there's a lot of people who pick it up on the 4th or 5th time. And if I didn't post it that many times, they might not see it. Again, I'm mixing that in with other people's content, but I'm definitely pushing my stuff out there. When you use Twitter.com, and even when you use services like Hootsuite or TweetDeck to manage different social platforms, including Twitter, what you'll see is that there are some simple analytics attached to those programs. And what those will tell you is how many impressions your tweet gets, how many clicks people make onto it, when is the most popular time for you to post, and oftentimes it's a bar graph. So if you see that like the most popular time for you to post is Saturday night between the hours of 6 and 8 p.m., then you want to throw a lot of information out at that time. Or if you see that during the weekday, the most popular time when people retweet you or like you or comment on what you're doing is 3 p.m., well, that's when you want to throw down your best stuff. Most people don't use that level of strategy, but you should, because again, it expands your reach and it makes you look more impressive to followers and people that you want to refer you cases and potentially journalists as well. How to mention is also an important thing as well. And this is something that attorneys and other professional users of social media often leave out. So the thing about Twitter is it functions all on usernames. So just like you, in order to send someone an email, you'd have to put their email address in the subject line. If you want someone to see what you're doing on Twitter, you have to @ them. So there's a little @ symbol with somebody's username after it. For mine is Jared Correia. If somebody wants me to see that they posted something related to me or that would be of interest to me, or if they've reposted something I've done, they got to put @Jared Correia somewhere in the Twitter post. Same thing for you. If you want to be noticed by a journalist at the Wall Street Journal, let's say, that you'd like to be interviewed by someday, if you're going to repost one of his articles, you want to post the article, and then you want to add somewhere in that article, like by X person at a specific journal or newspaper. If you do that, you'll get in their feed, and then a lot of good things can happen. A is that they'll notice you and they may get back in touch with you. They may end up wanting to use you as a source. You might get reposted, which expands your reach as well. And the thing is, every time you post something on Twitter, your reach can potentially be expanding exponentially. So if you have 4,000 followers and somebody reposts you who has 8,000 followers, someone else may see that post and they have 4,000 followers and they retweet it. And one of their people has 15,000 followers and they retweet it, and so on and so forth. You get a lot of traction doing this stuff. And it's all free, which is something I should mention. It's free to have a Twitter account and free to use some of these social media management services, these dashboards, where you can post to multiple services at once. One of the big things about Twitter and social media in generally, and this is especially true of referral sources and colleagues and other attorneys, is that you want to be able to interact with people and engage with folks. This is not a static broadcasting tool. People are going to expect that you talk to them. And so you have to reply when people have questions for you. You have to reply when somebody posts something that you've done, even if it's simple, hey, thanks for posting that, or I appreciate that. That's what people are looking for. So anytime you can have a conversation on social media, that's great. I mean, you're not going to want to be doing confidential information where you're talking to clients, but I think you get my drift with the fact that you want to be a subject matter expert. And one of the ways you can be a subject matter expert is by talking to people about issues related to your expertise. I talked a little bit about what to link, but one thing that's important is when you're posting articles, you have a limited number of characters. So you want to be using a link shortener. And if you're using twitter.com or if you're using a social media management product like Hootsuite, the link will be shortened automatically. But if you're not posting via one of those 2 or 3 or 4 options, you're posting using some other management tool of some kind, you want to make sure that links get shortened. Because if you post one of those big long website links in there, that may be 280 characters on its own. You want to get that shortened up to about 30 or 40 characters, which gives you more time to write an introductory piece, which gives you more time to give your opinion. And now that Twitter has doubled the character limit to 280 characters per post, you have a lot more opportunity to say the things that you want to say. But even so, with a link shortener, you get even more of an opportunity to do that. So the last thing I'll say here is a lot of people, unfortunately, use social media to beef with each other. They argue about things. They engage in heated debates. And I said before that you want to be an advocate for your clients, but you don't want to necessarily get into these flame wars on Twitter. And especially if there are folks out there trying to troll you, because there are people who will do that on social media, who pick on you for picking on you's sake. There are folks who get their rocks off by doing that on Twitter. So you want to be careful about engaging people like that, because it's not going to get you anywhere and it's going to make you look bad. You always want to stay professional, even if you're debating a topic, and you always want to leave people with a professional impression of you, because all this stuff is on the internet. It's available forever. So let's talk a little bit more about how to post on Twitter. I talked about this before, but it's a great way to amplify your content. So if you have a blog or a video that you've done or an article that you've written and you want to amplify your reach, post it on social media, post it on Twitter, and get into 5 or 6 other different streams that you would not have gotten into previously. The thing to remember here is you have no idea how people are going to consume your information. Somebody who's a potential client or a referral source may really like Twitter, but somebody else might like LinkedIn, and somebody else might like Google+. You never know. So you want to be in as many streams as possible. And if you're using a social media dashboard, which is what I've mentioned a few times here, you can post across channels by using one click, one stroke of the key. So I like a product called Hootsuite, but there are others. Raven Tools is another. Sprout Social has some tools available. TweetDeck is another. You can post and schedule posts on this dashboard across various different social platforms. So you could have one blog post, and you could post it simultaneously to LinkedIn, Twitter, Google+, Facebook. Just press one button, and you can schedule everything. So the dirty little secret of how I am on Twitter and social media is I tend only to check my accounts once a week. And that's because I schedule everything. So if you use a social media dashboard, you can cross post, which is going to save you time. And then you can also schedule posts ahead of time, which is also going to save you time. Now, if you go on once a week, you want to be engaging during that once a week period. So if people have responded to you, if there's something you want to say about other posts that people have, you want to actually have that dialogue at some point. But in terms of scheduling, if you're worried about being on social media all day long, which a lot of attorneys tell me they worry about, well, schedule your time, schedule your posts, and maybe your social media day is Wednesday from 9 to 10 at night, and then you're done. But you're still having the same effect of getting into all these different social media channels that you would not have been getting into before, and that you haven't gotten into to this point. And it should be fun, I should say, as well. This is not necessarily meant to be super serious. This is not a law review article. This is not a law journal. It's a social media channel. So the key is being engaging and being interesting. And it helps to have a little bit of a personality and to display that personality when you're online. Part of learning how to use a service like this is following the right people. So you can kind of see how people who are really good at this do it. And there are several types of people you should follow on Twitter. Locally, you should be looking for other business leaders, folks who could potentially give you referrals, folks who are active in the community, folks who could vouch for you as a subject matter expert. Follow those people, they'll amplify your content. And if they're good at using social media, you can pick up some things from them. Follow other subject matter experts. Maybe you're a family law attorney and you get referrals from CPAs. Well, follow CPAs on social media. Maybe there are some colleagues you have whose work you respect. Maybe you are an estate planning attorney in Massachusetts, but you really think somebody does a good job in California. Well, you're not going to be cross-pollinating clients, but you can post their stuff and they can post your stuff. And remember, this is a national channel, so if somebody in California has a potential client in the Massachusetts area, they could kick that person to you rather than somebody else because they're communicating with you regularly. Again, you can also learn some stuff from these folks if they're really good at posting and using social media. Other legal experts, same type of thing. In terms of business management, so this is something that I focus on. I'm essentially a business management consultant for lawyers. And there are a bunch of law practice management experts out there. There are people who talk about issues related to managing a law firm all the time of various stripes. Some people focus on using Mac in the law office. Some people focus on marketing exclusively. Some folks focus on systems and going paperless. There's a bunch of folks out there who are experts, many of whom are former attorneys who may also be able to refer you some cases as well. And generally speaking, a lot of the business management consultants I know, and of course I'm biased, really are good using social media. So following folks like this, you can kind of learn on the fly and see how they do it. And copy what these people do. That's fair game. I addressed this before, but I just want to underscore the point. You want to follow people who are promoters, who are going to be pushing your product potentially when the time arises. You want people who are part of your tribe, as it were, part of the people who are going to spread your message for you. Getting referral business is the easiest way to market because it's the least time intensive way to market. Once you build up referral sources, as long as you stay in touch with them on a semi-regular basis, you don't have to do the work of building up those referral sources again. You can build up new referral sources. So get those going and reduce your efforts over time. I talked about the value of finding reporters who will write about you. I talked about the value of finding referral sources who can give you cases. Some of your clients are really going to like what you do, and they're going to push you to their friends and family. So allow those people to connect with you online. Again, you're not necessarily having conversations about confidential information related to your practice, but what you're doing is allowing them access into a continuing stream of information about what you do, cementing yourself as a subject matter expert, and then not letting them forget about you. Is that one quick? I'm already at 2:30. Let me see if there's anything I want to talk about in the next few slides, and then I'll go to questions. talked a little about this. You should follow organizations, many of which are active in your local communities. This is one thing I want to talk about. Symbols are important on Twitter, and certain symbols mean certain things. The @ symbol always precedes someone's username. So if you want someone who you're tweeting at to notice what you're doing, make sure you put the @ in front of their username. Pound is before a hashtag, and a hashtag on Twitter is a way to aggregate a certain subject. So if you're an immigration lawyer and you want to talk about issues related to immigration, you want to include in your post somewhere pound immigration. And then someone can click directly on that and get information about immigration. Now that could be as specific or as general as you want, but that's a way to get into additional streams and also make it easier for people to search out your content. RT means retweet, and that's essentially you're forwarding someone else's information. So if you see an article that you like, let's say, and you want to push it forward to your followers, it's as simple as clicking a little button. It's going to add an RT in front of it, and then you push out the content to your stream. It takes a fraction of a second. Piece of cake, great way to amplify other people's content. Now I list a period here because that's important. If you started a conversation on Twitter with the @ and someone's username, that's only going to be viewable between you and that person and each of your followers. However, if you put a period before the @ symbol, that's a conversation that's going to be viewable by anyone on Twitter. So if you wanted to have a conversation for public consumption about a current issue, you want to make sure that you put the period sign if you're starting with an @ and talking with somebody. Some people do that intentionally, but it's a little trick that a lot of people don't know about. The last two things, HT means hat tip. So that means it's not necessarily a direct retweet, but if you have some information that someone gave to you or an article that somebody sent to you that you really like and you want to give them credit for it, but you're not reposting their content, after you're done posting the information, you can put HT for hat tip, like I got this information from this person, and then their username. The last thing is DM. So Twitter has a message box like many social media channels do, like everyone does probably at this point. And this allows you to have a messaging app that's between you and someone else or you and a few other people, but that's not going to be published publicly in any way. Even between you and the person you're talking to and the followers, this is a direct one-to-one conversation. If you wanted to start a direct message chain with someone, you just hit a D in front of it, in front of the message, and then you post it that way. I don't love this. I think it's pretty dangerous, and I don't like to have a lot of private conversations on Twitter. If I'm talking with folks on Twitter, my notion is that it's going to be a public conversation, and it should be a public conversation. If I want to have a private conversation with anyone, I'm going to an email or I'm going to a Slack channel or something like that. So I missed only one slide. Not bad. So here's my contact information. If you got any questions about Twitter, there's my Twitter account right there, @Jared Correia. I'm also available at jared@redcavelegal.com. And my understanding is that Ted is going to publish this presentation via YouTube. So if you're listening to this on YouTube and you're not live, feel free to hit me up with questions on Twitter @Jared Correia or at my email at jared@redcavelegal.com. And I'm going to pause for a second just to see if there are any questions. And thanks again, Ted. This was fun. That half hour goes by really fast.
No, thank you, Jared. We actually did get a couple questions, which you subsequently covered in your presentation.
Beautiful.
So we had a question
about. I've done this before.
So we had a question about Twitter trolls and another question about direct messaging and your thoughts on private conversations on Twitter, which you just talked about.
It's not private. Don't pretend it is.
With that said, I think we can forego the Q&A section. But I want to thank Jared on behalf of Pro Judicata for presenting today. And of course, a huge thank you to everyone in the audience as well for joining us. As Jared mentioned, keep an eye on your inboxes because we'll be sending out a follow-up email and you can get this archived presentation for viewing later on YouTube. And of course, we appreciate any feedback that you provide. And so with that said, thanks again, everybody, and have a great day.